My name's Lane Burt. I'm the Technical Policy Director at the U.S. Green Building Council, and I'm here to talk a bit about LEED. And I think I just want to start off with show of hands. How many people have heard of LEED? How many people feel like they know LEED? How many people feel like?
That's why you're here.
How many people feel like the whole thing's too damn confusing? So that generally goes about like I expect it to go. It's something that I'm going to try to explain from its ideation to its implementation and try to focus on what I'm hoping is of interest to this community and try to both explain what it is and maybe a bit about why it is the way it is, because full well acknowledging that it can seem very complicated, but it is that way for a reason. And I hope that we can clarify some of that, and hope you come away from this with a lot more understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve. So let's see here, get the clicker going here. So before I do that, the U.S. Green Building Council is the organization, a 501c3 nonprofit, that puts out the LEED Green Building rating system. And what they do is they do a lot of things. This is one of the things that they do. And I'm going to touch on some of those other things at the end, but that's part of why I think a lot of things get confused. We do too many things, but I'm going to focus the bulk of my time today on LEED and then touch on everything else. So LEED is based on a simple idea. We know that buildings have huge impacts. We know that it's 40% of total energy consumption, 70% of total electricity consumption happens in buildings. We know what those impacts are on all of us. We know what the negative influences are. What if we knew how our decision-making process in buildings was driving those impacts? What if we had a nutrition label? So buildings are complicated. They're more complicated than food. But much like food, what goes into it is not the same thing as what it does to your body. It changes. So with a nutrition label, the idea is that we're going to somehow, as best we can, and I'm sure we could do better and simplify and all that stuff, communicate the impact that this will have on your body, so you understand, so you can make an informed decision. Same concept for building. With that noble and fairly difficult goal in mind, USGBC developed the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Standards. Simple idea. If we put this information out there, if we have a framework for understanding these things, we'll be much farther along. We'll be on our way to reducing the impacts that those buildings have on all of us. And that's probably the end of the simplicity, but that's the idea, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So when you walk into a building, this is what you see. This is just the plaque. It tends to be what most people want. It tends to be, in some cases, all they care about. And it tends to be the tip of the iceberg. This is a signal that there's a whole lot more that went into this building than would have occurred in the average building design, construction, operations process. It tells you a bit of information, but what it really tells you is that more thought went into this building, that there's something else behind this. I'll go a bit more into the details, but there are some details that you can take from the plaque itself. You can see the level, platinum, and you can see the year. Those are important pieces of information, so important that we put them on the plaque, but again, there's a lot more behind there. What's behind there is that nutrition label concept. How is this building impacting all of us, the occupants, the owner, in all the measures of sustainability? So energy efficiency, where the building is located and sited, the health, the water efficiency, and the materials used. These are the lenses by which we distill different impacts down so that we can try to assess what is good, what is okay, what is not as good, and what is really leadership, which is what LEED is about. So the concept here is that you've got these categories, and then you can achieve points within these categories. So within the process that you're going through to create or operate your building, you are going to go after these points by doing certain things that are better than the status quo. Everything that you do normally in the building process, LEED is going to be somewhere there to ask you to do better. Those categories were developed over a long amount of time, and it's not, we can't say that this is the best way to look at it or it's the only way to look at it. What it is a way to simplify a lot of complicated things down into bins that we can all understand on a gut level. We understand energy and using less of it. We understand water and using less of it. We understand that where the building is located is as important as what you do there. We understand that the building has to be a healthy environment for the people who are in it, or it's not a good building. And then we understand that the materials that we pick and how we pick them and where they come from and how they're used, these are all very important things. So these bins are set out in a way to try to put things in relative categories and to assess leadership across all of these different categories. So within the context of these categories and individual points for achieving better than the status quo on individual actions, you sum up those points. So if you have a building that's done some things but not everything, then you have just a certified level, which is on the far left. You have a building that's done a good amount, but still not as much as others. You can have a full spectrum. It's certified, silver, gold, and platinum. It's a way to distill down even further those 5 bins into a concept of leadership, and it's the tip of the iceberg. It's the outer layer to the onion that most people see when there's a whole lot more behind it. You get a certified level is 40 points on our rating system, 50, 60, and then up to 80 for platinum. You have to get at least that many points. And again, it's still fairly simple to this point, and this is a slide that I hope to spend a bit more time on, because this is where I think it gets much more confusing, and I will go ahead and apologize in advance, but there are reasons. So there are different flavors of the rating system. A LEED building, if someone just says, I have a LEED building, what does that actually mean? Well, it doesn't really mean that much. You need more information, because a LEED home is something different than a LEED office building. An office building that's empty is something different than an office building that's full. So we've tried to tailor the same concepts, those same 5 bins, those same awarding of points for better results to different building processes. The flavors of the rating system exist because of the way buildings are constructed. And again, it's mirroring the idea that every time you go through a building process, we're going to ask you to do better. For homes, this is a separate rating system called LEED for Homes. It's probably one of our least well-known. It's for new homes only. It's for those homes being constructed. It's developed separately from the commercial rating systems, and that's because homes and what the process and the impacts you can have are very different. And the final interface with the customer is also very, very different. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on homes later on, as well as a couple other rating systems. But the next one is LEED for neighborhood development, which also looks very, very different from the other rating systems. This is a rating system that's designed for folks who are neighborhood planners, developers, doing large projects broader than building scale, the neighborhood scale. Because we can do a lot to make buildings better, but if they're out in the middle of nowhere and everyone's driving SUVs to them, we haven't really had the impact that we were after. We also haven't achieved the benefit of green building for anyone beyond the person that's in that building for that limited amount of time. Having a neighborhood that's developed with people in mind is a far different place than one that's not. Again, it's much more different for this community. I think you'd probably see it in new projects that are opening up, and there would be a lot of newness there. So it'd be something that would trigger you to do a little bit a little bit different thing. It's something different in your assessment of the properties itself, but it's not something that you're not going to hear about. Everything is going to be new. Everything's going to be slightly different. They're going to wear it on their sleeve because it takes years to develop a project of that scale, and therefore it takes years to go through this program. It's not something they're going to hide. Then we move into the commercial rating systems, which is really, it's our bread and butter. It's where we've had most success. Most of the time you hear someone say a LEED building, they're talking about an office building, possibly a hotel, possibly a retail complex, but that's where we've had the most traction in the market. And instead of just having LEED for commercial, part of the reason we've had that success is because we have flavors of the rating system that fit the different processes under which these buildings are developed. You have buildings that are just built. Everything is designed right then. It's moved into occupation very, very quickly. So that's where we have this new construction and renovation rating system. All those things that happen in the different bends can follow through the entire process until the building is handed over to the owner. The distinction here is that that's not always what happens. Sometimes people build a speculative office building. Sometimes it's just a core and shell. Sometimes they have no control over what the tenants come in and fit out their space as. But all of that does impact the total performance of the building and the impact it has on us. So we try to reward leadership in the folks who are building core and shell buildings by having them do as much as they can, what is within their control. And then the counterpoint to that is that sometimes people come into a building that's already built, that there's a shell, and they do a full fit out. This is, again, where we're trying to get them to do better. They can't change the fundamental core and shell of the building, so we can't ask them to, so we don't. And then finally, we have some very specific flavorings for specific building types that are a little trickier and have special considerations: schools, healthcare, retail. The proliferation of flavors of the rating system is just, it's because we ask people to do better in what they have the power to do better, and we don't pretend that the engineer can force the owner to actually do what he said. We can't pretend that the contractor installed all the equipment exactly the way the engineer spec'd. We have to check all those things, and we have to make those linkages, but we can't hold the wrong person accountable. And arguably, that's been the reason that people have been so comfortable with LEED, is because when you move through the process of certifying the building, the engineer knows what he's being asked to do. The architect knows what he's being asked to do. And then finally, the contractor knows what he's being asked to do. Now, again, another complication. Those rating systems that I just went through, they're all about the process of getting the building built. Once it's built, it's a different world. What you actually do with the building is very different. So these are rating systems for design and construction. As the architect and engineer as they go through their design process, the entire design team, they're asked to do better. They hand it off to the construction process where the contractors put in what is specified. They do what they have to do to make it work. All that has to be done in a way that fits what they're trying to achieve with this LEED building. And that's all these rating systems are trying to address. Once you have a real building, it's up to the owner, the operator, the folks in charge of the maintenance to make sure that it actually achieves that potential that the architects and engineers have inherently designed in this building, that the asset part of the building. The actual realization of that potential is on another party. For that reason, we have a different rating system. It's called the LEED for Existing Buildings, Operations and Maintenance. It's a really, really important distinction to draw, that these are the only ones where you have real buildings. Everything else is an assessment of potential. And it's incredibly confused in the marketplace. And it's something that I think USGBC needs to do a better job of communicating about, but we cannot emphasize that difference more directly. You heard a bit of it from Maria when she talked about portfolio manager and it relying on actual consumption information and normalizing that. LEED for existing buildings relies heavily on portfolio manager, and in fact could not exist without it. So it's because of those tools and because of that approach that we're able to try to continue this concept of leadership on a lot of different metrics over to existing buildings, and without that we would not be able to get there. So there's a lot of information here. it's much more simple visually than it is to explain. But I hope that will clarify a little bit of why people can be confused about what a LEED building is. It can mean different things at different times. It can mean different things for different buildings. The reason it's there is because the process is different in each case. And not because we said it should be, because it was, and we're responding to that. Last complication, LEED changes. A LEED building 10 years ago is not the same thing as a LEED building today. The reason this happens is because the mission of the organization is to just eliminate the concept of green building. All buildings should be equally good. There should be no concept of an unhealthy but efficient building, of a water wasting but pleasant and thermally comfortable building. These things shouldn't happen. Eventually, all buildings should be positive environments. They should be healthy. They should be efficient. We seek what we call full market transformation. No more niche of green buildings, just buildings. The way we do that is by putting out the rating system, reacting to the way the market reacts to it after some time, and then updating it. What becomes, provides multiple points can become required, a prerequisite, no points. There can be continued evolution in different categories, but the end goal in mind is on this chart. We've got where we used to be. We started with version 1.0. We went to version 2, version 2.1, version 2.2. We decided to stop counting like that. We shifted to LEED 2009, and we're on a model now where every 3 years we're going to update. There will be a new version of the rating system, and that means a new version of all those flavors. The process here is it's literally, we respond to where the market has changed. We take a lot of input, and I'll get a little bit more into the process, but we continue to move the ball forward. Eventually, buildings should have a net positive impact. We're a long way from that, but we're getting better. And then at the bottom, you can see as we move along, time being the left to right side, and impact being up and down, these things become status quo. These things that used to be niche become part of the code. They become part of the baseline. And that's where we have completion of the mission, at least in this time period. So now we committed to updating rating systems every 3 years. There's got to be a process for doing that. And the way we do that is, it's very much like the crowdsourcing model. We have a big community. I'm going to touch a little bit more on the community later, but there's a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of people with a lot of opinions. There's a lot of people who think we give too many points for energy. There's a lot of people who think we don't pay enough attention to volatile organic compounds. There's a lot of people who think we should use more wood in our buildings. Like, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that, care about things deeply, and that's our constituency, and we're proud to have it. But how we organize that constituency is our problem. We try to pull the most active folks, the people who will help us develop the rating system, into a committee structure. So these volunteer committees, based on their professional life, based on their skills, based on their expertise, they are put together at least by the credit categories that I showed you earlier, but more likely by issue category. And they write the rating system. They're the ones that are in the market. They're using it. They're reacting to it. We have a lot of different stakeholders from different places on these committees. They are the ones who write the new version of the rating system. But that's not it. It doesn't go to the man behind the curtain and we make a decision or anything like that. Then it goes out for public comment. We have a process where we open up for public comment. In the updating to the 2012 version of the rating system, which we're currently in, we're in the second public comment, which actually just closed, I think, last week. We get 6,000 to 9,000 comments per time that we open it, and we respond to everyone. That sometimes is a great way to get information. That sometimes is not a great way to get information, but there's no shortage of eyes on this product. After second public comment, we've institutionalized this process, that's when we put out the rating system. We reserve the right to go to more public comment, and in fact, I think we're going to be doing that for the 2012 version of the rating system, because sometimes there's a lot of change, and we need to make sure that we understand how is the market going to react to this, or at least have a good estimate. If we go too far, No one's going to use this voluntary standard. No one's going to do it. If we don't go far enough, it's too easy. It becomes meaningless. It's a constant balancing act, and this is where it happens. Before it goes final, then, it goes to our full membership. And so we have 15,000 or so member companies. They all vote. We get turnout just like everyone else, but it's balloted up or down. And that's how LEED is developed. It's painstaking. It's very, very thorough. There's a lot of people involved. It's consensus-based. It's a lot of work. And but it generates a product, a rating system from the community, from the people who are in the market doing it. And that's for no small reason why people are comfortable with it. So again, back to the plaque. This is the tip of the iceberg. If you go into a building and you see this, it's telling you something. It's telling you this building got platinum. It's telling you under what year they got platinum. So we know this is the 2009 version of the rating system, and we know what level of achievement they had. We don't actually know anything else, but we do know that if you ask more questions, there's a whole lot more information there. That nutrition label that I showed earlier, that's back there somewhere. Beyond the nutrition label, there's plans, there's notes on what was installed, what were the strategies. There's a whole lot more information, but it's for appraisers, they're trying to understand how this impacts the value of the property. It's one thing to have the information. It's one thing to understand sort of why people are going after trying to certify their buildings to LEED. It's not necessarily clear where to go to get all that. I want to touch for a minute on sort of the value proposition. Why do people certify? And it's much like why you require anything certified as yourself, and why you want a certified surgeon or anything else. You want to get what you pay for. You want some assurance that this is what it appears to be. We've emphasized that throughout LEED, in that the value here is that folks who go through the process and come out with a LEED building, once they've done it a few times, they know that it's just a better building than the building that was constructed in the status quo. For whatever reason, they're motivated to look at it the first time. Once they've done it a few times, they start to understand what it really does for them. And part of the reason we have that just to be the default, that this building is better, is because all those points, all those different bends, those are all different people talking to each other. Those are all different parts of the building process that are forced to communicate. The architect and an engineer have to talk about what glass is spec'd so they can size the mechanical system. The engineer has to talk to the folks who are designing the interior space so they can make sure it's thermally comfortable and also healthy. They have to have enough fresh air, and they can't be off-gassing stuff from the tables and chairs and ruin all of that. They have to be able to keep the whole picture in mind. So that comes out at the end of the process with that having been done. All those boxes haven't been checked, all those conversations had, and turns out the building's a lot better for it. Turns out the design is much more sophisticated. It's a much more pleasant place to work. It's a much more pleasant place to live. And that's why we see, I should also say that one of the other things that we require is that there's some commissioning that's done, which means someone actually goes in on the owner's behalf and checks to make sure everything was done as it was supposed to be done, which is certainly not a requirement in the building process, but does happen in the LEED process. So on behalf of the owner, this is something that they see as a value. And then it continues to shake out from there. Tenants start to realize that occupying a LEED space or building out a LEED space is much more pleasant. Owners start to realize it's a lot cheaper to operate one building that doesn't waste energy or water. We're luckily in the place now where we're starting to get a lot of that data, a lot of that information back on how these buildings are doing and did. Are they achieving what they set out to achieve? Is their potential realized? So these things we're at the cusp of moving these things from soft costs, soft data, anecdotal stuff. We just do it because we like it. Seems better. It's been better a few times. We're going to keep doing it. We're starting to put numbers behind these things, and that's a really powerful thing, and I think I hope really important for this community. I want to go back to the nutrition label and what it means when you walk into a building and you see the plaque and you know it. At the very least, you have this much information waiting for you somewhere. You can find out, and this is a max possible points, you can find out how many points they got on sustainable sites, how many points they got on water efficiency, how many possible points they got on energy and materials and indoor environmental quality. You can kind of start to distill where what the priorities were for the creation of this building. Where was the significant investment? Is there a more sophisticated, more energy efficient mechanical system behind here that I wouldn't necessarily already know? Is the interior space designed to be far more comfortable, far cheaper to light? All these different synergies that happen within a green building, are they there? This is a place to go to find out kind of where to look for more information. And there are a couple places where we try to keep that information, and they're both online. One of them is a newer tool that I'd like to direct people to. It's called the Green Building Information Gateway. And at the very least, you walk into a LEED building and you want to know more about it. And assuming the owner has said it's okay to share information, which is always a big if, you can go online to this gbig.org, and find out. You can get that nutrition label. It's not LEED exclusive. Every Energy Star portfolio manager building is in there with the score. We're trying to get as much information in here as we can because it's a map of LEED buildings is not as useful as a map of buildings. It's one way to go and find more information, and it's visual, and there's something really powerful about finding yourself on a map, whether you're an owner or just a member of the community. We're finding that there's a value to that we couldn't put our finger on. The other place to go is less cool, but it is our project database. The good thing here, and this is all completely linked to GBIG, so you'll find the same information, but some projects have more information than others. Some have full case studies. Some have a lot more information behind them than just scorecards. You can start to pull out, what did they invest in? What were the systems? What were the strategies? And that's all on the asset side. I know we're trying to link it as explicitly as we can to actual performance so that it's not only just what you plan to do, but also what you have done. But that's a larger challenge that we're dealing with all the time. We're doing a lot of work. These stats are a bit out of date, 6 months about. So it's more than this, but 30,000 registered projects. It's much easier to announce your intentions to do this than it is to follow through. And we're actually at the up-to-date number is 10,000. 10,000 projects actually certified. It means they've gone through, they've completed the process. We've confirmed that they did what they said they were going to do. These are the real buildings that have shown leadership. And this is for all the rating systems except for homes. Again, out of date, but 1.5 billion square feet of space. That's a lot. I want to spend a little bit more time on existing buildings because this is a priority for us because of the recession, for whatever reason, because the president talked about it, because we care more about this stuff now. There's a focus on existing buildings, and we've got a hockey stick graph of people who are certifying their existing buildings, certifying based on actual performance. It's a very positive trend. It's a trend that we're seeing continue, and we hope to make sure that these generation of buildings that have certified on potential will continue to move forward and certify on what they've actually done. Here's a graph that shows explicitly the overlap between what Maria told you about and what we do in LEED for existing buildings. The energy mechanism is portfolio manager. These are the distribution of scores for the LEED buildings, and you can see it's scattered, but there's significant leadership here. These are percentiles. That meaning that this building in the 79 is in the 79th percentile in energy consumption for buildings of that type. I think the average Energy Star score for a LEED EV project is around 86. Also want to spend a few minutes on LEED for homes because, as I said at the beginning, developed very differently for new homes only. We do not weigh into existing homes. There are more considerations in a home. There are different ways that you have to talk about things. People care about different things in a home than they do in an office building or a mall or a hotel. There's complications with multifamily and single family. But what you get with a LEED home, and this is, it's not all, there are many projects, but we're, compared to our success in commercial, it's not a lot of homes. You can have a home from builder A that's energy efficient, healthy, and safe. You can have a home from builder B that is also durable and water efficient, and then finally from builder C can also be environmentally responsive, meaning when you need something else, it can do something else thermally. And in a sustainable community, these are all the things that we try to encapsulate with the homes rating system. Not very easy to do, but we are having some success in communicating that. And again, it's for new homes only. One stat that we're incredibly proud of is that 50% of all LEED for homes are certified affordable. And this goes for LEED all over across the board. If you're contracting with people and they're telling you it's too expensive, you're doing it wrong. It doesn't have to be more expensive. You need to find a new person to do it for you. And a few quick case studies. There's more information about this stuff on the website. Here's the Bronx Library building in New York. These are just a few things that they did pulled out. There's a whole lot more behind there, but trying to illustrate the difference in achievement that you can have within these projects. 90% of demolition debris recycled, 20% energy cost savings, and 80% of wood certified sustainable. Office building, Boulder, Colorado, 39% of the furniture has recycled material, 43% less water use, 55% construction waste diverted from the landfill. Sidwell Friends down the road here in DC, 90% water use reduced, 60% less energy demand, 80% local plant species used in the entire site. And then finally, a multifamily home project, fairly dense, 15 units per acre, 29% better attic insulation, and then 44 of the homes available for low-income families. It's too soon. We're not suggesting that all these things will be of interest to you as appraisers, but certainly some of them will, and we hope that you'll take a look at where there is more information, what that means. Lastly, I want to touch on some of the other things that we do that will just no doubt confuse everyone more. Companies are members of USGBC. People are members of USGBC chapters. That's something that gets confused often. We have 15,000 member companies, 180 of the Fortune 500, 79 chapters. Obviously, we did not limit it by state, 30,000 individual chapter members. We also accredit people. This is where people start talking about they're LEED certified. That's not exactly, buildings are LEED certified. People are accredited. We have LEED accredited professionals, LEED Green Associates that have done the education and demonstrated by working on projects that they understand the green building process. We also do education around those accreditations and the rating system generally. And then finally, we put on basically a green building trade show every year. It attracts about 28,000 people. It's in 2 weeks in Toronto. It's called Green Build. Again, probably confuses people as to what it is that USGBC actually does. We do a lot of things, LEED being the primary thing that we do to actually make a difference in the market.